everyone. Welcome to my November video. It has been a while since I've touched on entertainment since my past two videos have been sort of dealing with random things. So I thought I would go back and kind of discuss a little bit of entertainment for you all. And this is probably a controversial and unpopular opinion among many people. But I thought I would discuss my personal overrated film of the year. So this is not only just an overrated film, this is probably one of the most overrated films, in my opinion, of the year. And that is the film Wonder Woman. Yes, DC has been trying to unveil a lot of their superheroes, and in doing so also create a team up, which we, as some comic book fans know as the Justice League, and who are probably way more familiar with it than I am. But as far as my understanding with superheroes go, I'm kind of I have a beginning level understanding of the basics. I never really got into superheroes as extensively as some other people, but I think I still have a right to express my personal opinion about this movie because it was fairly popular when it came out, and a lot of people seem to praise it and think it was better than a lot of the other DC works that were coming out during the time. And I don't think that is really all that true, because I think this movie has a lot of problems like the other DC movies have a lot of problems. And for some reason, this one seems to get a little bit more of a pass than the other ones, which could be for a variety of different reasons. But I'm going to kind of go over with you what my personal thoughts were and why I kind of don't jive with the consensus more so that this movie was all that good. And usually when I do overrated films, it's not necessarily that I personally dislike the film. It's more so that I think it's overpraised for what it is. However, in this particular case, I would say that this movie did not strike me all that much. It wasn't one of those movies where I could genuinely get into or vehemently dislike. It was more so a movie where I thought that the level of creativity and the level of interest was not there for me. Because I think one of the worst crimes a movie can do is make you bored. And I was really bored throughout this movie. The dialogue, I think, was definitely a problem as far as me getting sucked into the movie, because a lot of the dialogue I thought was poorly thought out and poorly laid out. Also, I thought the plot was kind of stupid. I think the idea of inserting Wonder Woman into a time period where she never existed, because she didn't come really to light until the 1940s, is ridiculous. So they basically inserted her into World War I, in case you aren't sort of familiar with the plot. And she sort of fights her villain and adversary there in that time period. And it's just one of those things where you look at it and go, there is so much more interesting stuff that they could have done with Wonder Woman, and they chose not to do that and instead do this kind of a stupid plot. But yeah, they did. So not only is she in the era of World War One, they also sort of make her kind of like the savior, so to speak, and that the whole debacle that was taking place during World War One was the result of her adversary. I believe his name is Ares, the god of war, if I'm not mistaken. And I find that to be kind of insulting to history, because World War One was a lot more complicated than that. And to make it so simplified as like, yeah, it was this evil guy all along who was, starting this whole crazy, ridiculous war is just, it's just stupid. I'm sorry, but that kind of a plot to me just speaks into the levels of laziness. It's like creativity trying to make it seem like it's creative by doing something out there. But just because you do something out there doesn't mean that it's creative or interesting. And this did not make sense to me whatsoever. First of all, Wonder Woman wasn't even created during this time period. I mean, her author, her uh, creator was around during this time period, and I can maybe understand why they would pick that, pick that as a time period. But at the same time, it still has nothing really to do with the character because the character never existed during that time period. Um, so it would make more sense to put her in World War II than it would be in World War One. So yeah, that I think gets completely botched by putting her in this kind of plot. Also, her character's not really developed all that well. In the beginning, we see her as a child, but that's only for like a couple of minutes, not even. And then she's already Wonder Woman and trained, and yeah, we don't really see any of her development with her people, the Amazonians, I think is how you pronounce them. So you don't get that. So a lot of what would make a Wonder Woman movie interesting, they choose not to put in. And the stuff that they do put in makes a Wonder Woman movie not interesting. So you have that going for it. What also really bothered me about this movie is how they I understand that during the time period, obviously they kind of have to bring up the fact that women were sort of treated differently than they are treated now. But the way they go about it is they go about it in such a lengthy way. Like there's like scenes where she's like they're trying to find her appropriate clothing for the time period, and all this stupid pointless stuff that we don't need Wonder Woman to be involved in or even show her being involved in. It's pointless. Stop doing that. Oh, it's just so pandery. And then when she's like kind of speaking up for herself, and you know how like back then it wasn't really considered appropriate for women to do that, and blah 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 blah, and just having that inserted on top of that is just annoying. We know that that time period was like that. You don't need to educate the audience on that, I think. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I don't get it. I don't understand. Why did we need this? We don't need it. So not only does the movie suffer as far as its plot and its characters for not being all too developed, but we also do have a very poor villain. This villain is pretty pathetic. I would say he's definitely on the level of the Justice League villain. Like he's kind of the same thing. He's the same like big monster. Like that's all they have is just a big monster. That's it. And again, the way that he is used in this movie to, kind of explain the way in which World War One got started and why there's all of this chaos and stuff in the world is stupid. Like, it's fiction. It's not real. Please don't insert your stupid villain into this era of stuff where it actually happened. Ugh. Because at least with Captain America, they kind of try to separate him out from the whole World War II thing. They try to make him a part of it, but they don't make him the epitome of, or make him or his villain the kind of epitome of the movie into which why, we won World War II. He's just kind of a side project that the military came up with. With Wonder Woman, they make this like kind of the forefront of everything. And then let's talk about her relationship with the boy or the dude in this movie. And I cannot remember his name because that's unfortunately how forgettable he is. um, and which is kind of ironic too because he's actually the actual sort of hero in the movie because he does end up sacrificing himself at the end. Spoilers. But it's done in such a poor way because basically what happens is he's taking all of the bombs that are on this plane that are going to explode and kill everyone, and he's going to sort of sacrifice himself and do a and just go up into the air with all of these bombs. So he just explodes, but nobody else does. And there's so many things wrong with this. First off, Wonder Woman is there during the time, and she just sits on the ground and cries. Like, literally, that's all she does. She doesn't attempt to save him because she could, because she's Wonder Woman. Hello, you can fly. You can go up there and get him. Oh, God. And then on top of that, it was a very sophisticated looking plane. Like, it wasn't like one of those little dinky World War One planes. It looked like a very highly sophisticated plane. Why wasn't there parachutes on the plane? World War One was when they started using parachutes. Why didn't he get a parachute? Like, I just felt like his sacrifice was so pointless when she clearly could have saved him, or he could have saved himself. Like, there's no. That's why this movie, I think, irks me a bit. Is it's just trying to insert like emotion into it when they do it, but and in doing so do it in such a poor way. Like, why didn't they just have him try to save Wonder Woman, like, from the evil dude? I don't get why they couldn't have done that. Or Wonder Woman tries to save him, but in the process, he still ends up getting killed or something. Like, I don't understand this. It's just so poorly thought out, in my honest opinion. And I think they could have honestly made a much better plot revolving around this. And I mean, what really irks me is the fact that they don't even really touch upon like her training or like her origin story. Nothing, none of that. It's just right into like 20 minutes in, we're already in World War One England. It's like, really? Is this what we think of when we think of Wonder Woman? We think of a woman going around and saving people during World War One. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it, and the way they simplify the plot in the fact that they treat like men as kind of like the adversaries because they start wars and stuff, and they treat this whole plot as like this simple kind of black and white. Yeah, violence is evil and love is good, and all that. It's so pretentious and so not well thought out and not complex or interesting that it just ruins everything for you as far as a superhero movie. At least in my opinion, it does. Because a superhero movie is supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be engaging. Even the action sequences are not that entertaining or that engaging or interesting. Um, I mean, I understand the criticisms for the other DC movies, but why does this one get a free pass? And I think, unfortunately, some of it has to do with the fact that this had a female director and this was about a female superhero, because we'd never seen really a female superhero movie standalone that was actually created on such a high level budget as this movie was. Oh, but man, they could have done so much better for Wonder Woman. Like, I just feel like this was just poorly orchestrated. And we don't see her interact at all with any of the other DC characters. They are non existent. So we have no reference and no clue into any of this because she's so far back in the past that she's not even around when the other DC heroes are supposed to be around. So, I mean, yeah, it's just having that whole plot was, I think, a very poor choice, and I think that's what unfortunately led this movie to not being, I think, as good or as good as some people made it out to be, because it didn't it didn't inspire anybody, or at least it didn't inspire me. It didn't lift me up and make me feel happy, you know? I mean, that's sort of what superhero movies are supposed to do. They're supposed to make you feel for the hero, and I don't really feel anything towards Wonder Woman one way or another. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this woman that they chose to play Wonder Woman, she's not really an actress. Like, she hasn't really done acting as far as from what I can tell. From what I understand, she is a Israeli model, and modeling is different than acting. Yeah, you're kind of putting on a show with modeling, but with acting, there's a lot more to it than just posing. And I felt like at certain points she was kind of posing and being a model and not really being an actress. And so that sucked me out of it as well. And I mean, just her interactions with the other main character, the dude who ends up sacrificing himself, like, not really a huge amount there going on. And they try to make funny lines that are not funny. Like, they try to make this movie funny when it's not funny, and that kind of is irksome. Especially when there's so much more funnier superhero movies out there, like Deadpool and Thor. Um, and again, this is, I think, what's unfortunate, because I think this is why Marvel is so much more creative and interesting than DC, is because the way in which they structure their movies and the way in which they present their movies, they know how to create, make them entertaining and engaging. And unfortunately for DC, it seems like whoever they put in charge seems to fall fairly short of a good superhero movie. And again, I don't think this is a good superhero movie, unfortunately. Um, is it as terrible as the other ones? It's hard to say, because I feel like they kind of all have their own separate and unique issues. But just to say, just because this one is good because it is trying something a little bit different, I don't think gives it a free pass. It's like saying the prequels were good because they did something different of Star Wars. You know, just because you try something different doesn't mean it always works out into your favor. And sometimes maybe doing something familiar but then putting your own unique spin on it ends up being way more inspiring and way more creative and interesting than trying something completely out there that doesn't make any sense. Again, when I think of Wonder Woman, I don't think of her going around World War One era, shooting or fighting Germans. Like, it's just, oh, it's so. Again, it's probably one of my, I guess, the overall beef that I have with this movie is its lack of creativity in trying to be creative. So putting something in different and expecting that to work and make it unique. And I don't think that this movie is all that inspiring or unique or interesting. Like, it's just boring. I think that's one of its biggest crimes. It's unengaging. It doesn't suck you in. At least it doesn't suck me in as far as a superhero movie is concerned. Like, I could think of so much better superhero movies that I could be watching in comparison to this one, that are much more clever and a lot more funnier, a lot more entertaining, a lot more engaging characters too than this one. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's really sad. I mean, it's because I want DC to really produce good superhero movies, because I mean, Marvel has done their job, and it's good that they have a little bit of competition, but this competition is so weak. And I think, unfortunately, this movie did get a pass because there was a woman director behind it. There was a woman star of the movie, and most of the movie was kind of dealing with that woman angle of, you know, of the woman man angle of, man starting wars and women wanting love and peace and all that. It's again, I think it's way too overly simplified, and they make the whole setting overly simplified and uninteresting, and that's what you, I think, unfortunately get with this movie. But I understand if people found some enjoyment from it, and I understand if you thought that certain parts of it were inspirational. That's all fine and good and dandy. But for me personally, I think that it was pandering itself way too hard. I think it just lacked the level of creativity and interest that got me even invested into really paying attention throughout it, because again, I couldn't even remember really people's names or remember, a lot of what was really going on, because a lot of it really didn't suck me in. And the points that did suck me in were like points where the movie was being really stupid, in my honest and humble opinion. But yeah, and the fact that we don't have an interesting Wonder Woman, at least I don't think she's interesting. They don't make her character compelling or creative or fun to watch. Is another nail in the coffin for this movie. So, and again, having this ridiculous plot on top of that just really doesn't do this movie any service. Um, so again, I understand if there are people who genuinely enjoyed it and found something entertaining from it, but from my explanations and from my understandings, this and conclusions, this movie did not do much for me. And I think it was pandering way too hard, and I think it tried doing something different, and in doing so, did not do it in a constructive and creative way. And hence, you get a boring movie, which I think is, again, one of the biggest crimes a movie can do, is just make you bored. And this movie bored me to tears. I was not engaged whatsoever. Like, there were points where I wasn't even really paying attention anymore because it just bored me. But yeah, that's just my honest opinion. I would be more than happy to hear what anybody else has to say, what their thoughts are, and what their feelings were as far as this movie, if you've seen this movie. If you think DC is, what you think of DC's movies in general, more than happy to hear any interesting comments, questions, concerns, and whatnot. Um, uh, and all of the people who celebrated Thanksgiving, I hope you had a great one. Um, and for those of you who are unfamiliar or don't really celebrate Thanksgiving that are from other places around the world, I hope you had a pleasant day, week, month, and year so far. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about this movie. But until next time, everybody, bye bye.